they're still part of our electoral law that still remains very mysterious, and or the FCT still remains one of those mysterious parts. How did INEC approach that?
From beginning, the commission was very clear on what the law was, because the issue of the interpretation of the place of FCT in the legal matrix had already been discussed by the commission. And our position was the position that was affirmed by the Supreme Court of Nigeria, because FCT, you cannot say that FCT is superior to every state in Nigeria, because constitutionally, in elections, when you are talking about FCT is regarded as a state within the Nigerian Federation. So you cannot elevate one state over and above another state.
This is Volume with FemiDlive. I'm glad you joined the show. A big thanks to everybody who has subscribed and who are still subscribing, sharing our videos in various formats and in different places. We are glad you're doing so. And yes, we are enjoying the fact that you're part of our family, doing all you can to promote our work and your work as well. Welcome once again. I am Femi D. Amele. My guest today is barrister Festus. Yes, is barrister Festus Okoye. Is the former INEC director. Yes, he worked at INEC and provided extensive knowledge on voter education to the public and also strategizing along the lines of electoral process within the same organization. He has extensively also worked for the government and various committees of the government, including the Justice Uwaisi's committee that brought on 23-man panel to make some of the strongest recommendations that would help Nigeria step forward. At some point, he also was on the confab team of 2014 that brought on some brilliant ideas still waiting to be executed. We hope that some of these ideas will help us take forward. But today we talk extensively about the electoral process and the landscape as we have it in Nigeria. Barrister Festus Okoye, welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
All right. So how has it been? I know life is different outside of INEC, and coincidentally, people say that when you leave a position, you see both the flaws and the strength of the organization. Now that you're doing more work outside, especially along the lines of electoral process, what do you imagine is happening? What's the impact you see you have made and the impact that there is still to make?
Well, when you are in public service, there's a certain responsibility that comes with it. As National Commission in charge of information and voter education, you articulate the views you agree with and the views you disagree with. In other words, when you go to a commission meeting and then there are certain issues that are tabled which you agree with, you articulate them and issue a press statement, go on television, go on radio, and canvass those issues. Sometimes you also attend a commission meeting and then there's something you are passionate about. And the other national commissioners said, no, we don't see it that way. This is our position. As National Commissioner in charge of information and voter education, it is also your responsibility to articulate those issues and go on television and canvass them despite your disagreement. So what that means is that you accept collective responsibility and you also accept the fact that you are not the repository of knowledge and intelligence, and that when you work in a collective, you must find ways and means of aggregating the views and interests of that particular collective. So that is it at the level of the National Commission. As somebody who is now a legal practitioner outside the commission, nothing has fundamentally changed. This is because before I went to the commission, I was a lawyer. I served in various committees. As you pointed out, I was in the Electoral Reform Committee of 2008. I was a civil society delegate to the 2014 National Conference. I served in the Abisoye panel on the Just Crisis. I served in INEC committees and so on and so forth before I went in there. And I chaired the transition monitoring group for a period of 4 years. So my going into the commission was a continuation of the work I'm doing. And outside the commission, I'm still continuing with the job of electoral reform. So nothing has fundamentally changed. The only thing that has changed is that I now have more time for myself, I have more time for the family, and I also have more time to rest. That is the only thing that has changed.
You look well rested.
Thank you.
I know how it has been, because we've had to call each other up in very, very difficult periods and time to explain things. One of your most interesting periods, and I can imagine this, you just talked about the views you support and the ones you see differently, and the ones you have to explain to Nigerians that you know it's even difficult to explain. I recall the 2023 elections, right? I beg to say, the elections we had last, and there was this talk about transmission of result or no transmission of result. Yes. But one phrase that I never forget was no apology. INEC was disappointed in some of the process points, but you were very sure that there was no need to issue an apology to the parties, to people clamoring for all kinds of things around it. Your position in getting the viewpoint out was the fact that this is technology. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work as planned. But let's not use this, if you make an apology, to say, let's condemn the whole process. What do you make of that process now when you think about it?
Well, as somebody who has worked in this particular area for some time, and somebody who has done some reflection, one of the biggest challenges I feel is out there is the challenge of false narratives. And I believe that those who are in the commission now must do all within their power to explain to Nigerians the processes and procedures governing elections and the electoral process. Before the election, I insisted, because I'm a lawyer, I insisted that the collation of results at all levels is manual and remains manual, because at the level of the polling unit, the presiding officer counts the votes, records them in what we call Form EC8A, that is the polling unit level result, and then carries those results manually to the next level of collation, which is the registration area collation center. And we have 8,809 collation registration centers in Nigeria. When it gets to that place, the collation officer also collates the results into Form EC8B, and then it moves from one level to the other. I believe that one of the challenges we had was that there was lack of understanding relating to that particular process. Secondly, we tried as much as possible to explain to Nigerians that the IREV was created for purposes of transparency and also to allow Nigerians to follow what happens at the level of the polling unit and also at the level of the collation center. That IREV is not part of the collation process because the collation of results remains manual. Now, so what has happened was that there were a lot of Nigerians who believed that the transmission of results was mandatory and that you must electronically transmit results of elections from the polling units to the next level of collation.
But INEC kept insisting that that was what they were going to do, so it's not wrong to assume that it was the standard required.
No. Don't use the word insist. We said we are going to do this for purposes of transparency and for Nigerians to follow what is going on at the level of the polling units and also at the level of the collation center. We never at any point in time said that the collation of results was going to be based on the results as transmitted. No, we said that the collation of results remains manual, but that we are going to transmit the results from the polling units to the next level of collation for purposes of transparency and for Nigerians to follow what is going on. This is because if you read the case of Oyetola and Adeleke, even before the 2023 elections.
That's Osun.
Yes, the Supreme Court made it clear that the collation of results in our elections is manual. If you also read the reports relating to the Presidential Election Tribunal and what the Supreme Court said, the Supreme Court also made it very clear that collation of results remains manual. So I think that the Commission must do more in order to explain to Nigerians what I call electoral terminologies. When you talk about the beavers, what does the beavers do in the actual sense of the word? When you talk about by-election, what does by-election mean? When you talk of court-ordered rerun election, what does it mean in concrete terms? When you talk about supplementary elections, what does that mean? When you talk about inconclusive elections, what does that mean in legal terms and in concrete terms? Because, for instance, if you mention inconclusive election before any Nigerian, there's panic. They say, oh, these people cannot conduct elections. But the truth of the matter is that when election is not concluded, it's inconclusive. So,
but it still means the election is valid, because a lot of people mean inconclusive means that the election is rubbish, if I would say, or didn't happen. That's the street interpretation.
Exactly. That's the point. But I give you a practical example, and that is what most Nigerians really didn't get. Let me give you an example with the elections that took the court-ordered rerun election that took place in Kano, in Gari State constituency. There was an election during the 2023 general election. There were problems, violence in 10 police units. 10. The election was rescheduled. It didn't work. Then for this particular period, on the 18th of August, I think, the election took place in the same temple, just 10 polling units. But the results of those 10 polling units were cancelled by the commission and results declared because there was overvoting in the same 10 polling units. So that election was inconclusive. A supplementary was ordered, and that supplementary also did not work out well. So I think that the commission must do more, and civil society groups and organizations must also do more to explain some of these things to Nigerians, so that the misinformation, misinterpretation, and miscommunication can be reduced.
I totally agree with you. They're still part of our electoral law, and there are many parts of this conversation which we'll venture into that still remains very mysterious, and or the FCT still remains one of those mysterious parts. But you're a legal practitioner.
Yes.
I can imagine your perception of when people say that, oh, this person didn't win in the FCT, so he's not the president, and all of that, because the law says and or the FCT is some part of it. I mean, how did INEC approach that?
From beginning, the commission was very clear on what the law was, because the issue of the interpretation of the place of FCT in the legal matrix had already been discussed by the commission. Both the directors who were in charge of electoral matters, directors who were in charge of ICT, and so on and so forth, had given the commission a breakdown of what may likely happen in FCT. And we had also given our own legal interpretation. I remember very clearly that I was on television with former president of the Nigerian Bar Association, Olisa Abakoba, and he raised the issue. And I told him point blank that the commission, INEC, had its own position relating to the place of FCT within the constitutional and legal matrix of Nigeria, and that we are not going to discuss it. And our position was the position that was affirmed by the Supreme Court of Nigeria, because FCT, you cannot say that FCT is superior to every state in Nigeria, because constitutionally, in elections, when you are talking about FCT, FCT is regarded as a state within the Nigerian Federation. So you cannot elevate one state over and above another state. So I think that the Supreme Court has settled the whole issue about the place of FCT within the legal framework of elections in Nigeria.
When we talk about the electoral bodies, states level, we have about 37 now. INEC itself, the headquarters, and 36 states with its own INEC level, state level representation. And one will start to venture, because there was one argument that was on around the time the 2008 electoral reform was on, whether, there should also be local government, representation of INEC to look at that election. That was in 2008. That's almost 20 years ago.
Yes.
And now we're doing local government elections. And in many of the elections that we're seeing one party takes it all situation, where one would then wonder, at the state level electoral bodies, are they doing well enough to monitor those local government elections? Because sometimes it looks like it's a runover at the end of the day. What do you make of that scenario where one would say, maybe INEC at the bigger body is more efficient, but at the state level, many of them may be passive.
Well, I was in the Electoral Reform Committee of 2007-2008, otherwise known as the West Committee.
Yes.
We went around this country. In all the states, all the memos we received, traditional rulers, civil society groups and organizations, women's groups and organizations, including political parties, all insisted that the state's independent electoral commissions should be integrated into the framework of INEC so that we can have one central electoral body for the country. They base this on the fact that the governors have an overbearing influence on the state's independent electoral commissions. And that is why they return 100% the ruling party. So that report is still there. There have been various suggestions, various reforms, and so on and so forth relating to the state's independent electoral commissions, but it has not worked. The Attorney General of the Federation had cause to go to the Supreme Court to insist that the monies and funds made for local governments should be withheld until the state governments and their state's independent electoral commissions conduct local government elections. Some of the elections that were conducted by the state's independent electoral commissions fell short of the expectations of the Nigerian people. And I'm just being modest in my choice.
Some say very bad.
In my choice of words. Now, the challenge now is that there has been constitutional and electoral reforms relating to the place of the local governments and the state's independent electoral commissions. 1, Section 7 of the Constitution is very clear. We must have democratically elected local governments. Nobody is disputing that. 2, the Constitution is very clear. The task of and the power to register political parties and the power to register voters resides with the Independent National Electoral Commission. So, the state's independent electoral commissions can only collect the list of political parties existing in Nigeria from the commission and collect the voters' register as it relates to the state from the Independent National Electoral Commission. But the National Assembly has also gone far to say that in Section 150 of the Electoral Act, that the procedure, I repeat, the procedure governing elections to the area councils in the FCT shall be the same procedure that shall govern local government elections at the state level. What that means is that, and I'll give you an example. What that means is that all the state's independent electoral commissions must conform to Section 28 and to Section 29 of the Electoral Act in terms of nomination. And that in nominating candidates, political parties have 180 days to the date fixed for the election to submit the names of their candidates. But you see a state independent electoral commission announcing date for election and giving 2 months for the conduct of elections in breach and in violation of the Electoral Act. And the Electoral Act in Section 150 says that any state independent electoral commission that violates the procedure for the conduct of elections, that whatever it has done is invalid, and that any staff of the commission who participates in the violation of Section 150 shall be prosecuted. But the truth of the matter is that who is going to carry out the prosecution? So I think that as a people and as a nation, we must get together and decide collectively.
Can't INEC, as the major body, the bigger body, overseeing the state's electoral body now, can't they sanction those states' electoral bodies that that breach the Electoral Act, electoral law, like you said? When they say, you have breached the law by carrying out elections 2 months before the period, or, all that, when they breach it, can't the central body, sanction the state level bodies?
No, the Independent National Electoral Commission cannot do that.
Why?
The Independent National Electoral Commission is a creation of the Constitution. The state's independent electoral commissions are a creation of the Constitution. Both of them derive their powers and their virus from the Constitution. So there's no way INEC can sanction any of them. The nexus between INEC and the state's independent electoral commissions is that INEC gives them the register of voters as it relates to their states for the conduct of the elections. Every other thing they do has nothing to do with the Independent National Electoral Commission.
But the officers are picked from INEC directly. I mean, I do not know of any state's electoral body leader that doesn't come from the headquarters. It's nomination or appointment or the likes of that. Similar to, when you have the chairman of INEC coming from the executive, somebody has to pick somebody at the state level to lead. And most of the time, it's always from the INEC.
No. If you look at the Constitution gives the governor of the state the power to nominate the chairman of the State Independent Electoral Commission and 5 other commissioners. And their nomination will be approved by the State Assembly, by the House of Assembly.
Which is often controlled by the governor.
Well, so that is really the procedure.
Do you find that a little bit awkward? Because you're a human rights activist and a legal practitioner. If the governor was from, let's say, I want to use a party that may not exist, at least not yet, ZPP. The governor is from ZPP and state assembly members, 24 of them are from ZPP. Are we suggesting that even a state commissioner that will be picked will possibly not have his political affiliation to ZPP, considering the fact that the governor, the state assembly members, possibly would want to pick somebody that favors them? Do you think there's a future in state commissioners leading electoral bodies at the state level if this same procedure is? Because if at the state level it's a problem, I'm guessing it's the same problem that we face at the national level when they say president picks the INEC chairman and the tenure of one INEC chairman is finishing and everybody starts to look at, hey, what do we do? Is his pay is from the north, is from this region? What's your thoughts on that? Maybe as a legal practitioner, not this time around, maybe not so much so as maybe you've worked with INEC. What's your thoughts on it?
Well, my position aligns with the position of the Constitution. If you look at the constitutional provision relating to states' independent electoral commissions and also the provisions of the Electoral Act, the National Assembly has made it very clear that in picking the chairperson or commissioners for the State Independent Electoral Commission, that whoever is picked shall not be a member of a political party. But for me, that does not go far enough. And what some people do, they belong to a political party. The moment they perceive that they're about to be nominated, they resign their appointment. And the moment they resign their appointment, they are no longer a member of that particular political party. So I think that the lawmakers must go further to say, for instance, that whoever is going to be nominated as chairman or commissioner of the State Independent Electoral Commission shall not have been a member of any political party for a period of 5 to 10 years preceding the appointment. That is one. Secondly, how does the governor make that appointment? Who suggests to the governor who to appoint? Sometimes those who make that suggestions wield what I call anonymous power. You never know. So I think that one of the procedures that we should try may be a procedure that allows an independent body, an independent agency, an independent organ, or a collection of people, a committee, to made up of maybe the Nigerian representative or the Nigerian Bar Association, civil society group, labor movement, and so on and so forth, to come together and do a short list for the governor and then hands over to the governor. And the governor looks at that particular short list of maybe 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 and makes up his mind on who best suits the position. But what we now have is a situation where anonymous power makes that particular nomination. And that anonymous power, you don't know what the interest of that anonymous power is. And the anonymous power, at the end of the day, takes control of the individual. But for me, when you get into a sensitive office, you can engage in self-censorship because of where you are coming from. Or you can assert your independence and your power based on the fact that to remove you as a public officer, as a national commissioner of the Independent National Electoral Commission, is a very cumbersome process. Very cumbersome process.
How?
Because before you can remove a national commissioner, you have to go back to the National Assembly. And you remove the national commissioner based on the provisions of the Constitution. Because the Constitution says that you cannot just be asked to go away. No. You must have been found wanting in the performance of your duties. And those, in fact, you have to be impeached the way a state governor is impeached by the National Assembly. You must be given a fair hearing. So if you get to a national office like INEC, office of an INEC national commissioner, it's your responsibility to perform or refuse to perform.
I see.
Yeah.
I was reading through the Justice Wise report. It's about 300 pages. For those who may want to check it out, it's about 300 pages. We'll drop the link of where one of the active links for people to read through if you are. And I read through I was reading the first 7 pages, the part of it, and I saw a lot of emotional words, a lot of, 23 people had sat and they had, prepared the mind of whoever was going to read the full part of the report to understand the context in which the work had been done. You were a member of that report, and it strongly struck out the idea of single day voting, right? And I presume that didn't go down well because of, everything was very minor. But now we have technology. So, can we do single day voting election in Nigeria? And why? And why not?
I can't support single day voting in elections in Nigeria. One, based on my experience as a lawyer. Secondly, based on my experience as a national commissioner. The first is that the president is elected for a 4-year period. Members of the national and state assemblies and the governors are elected for a 4-year period. But there's a challenge now. Because of the involvement of the judiciary, the involvement of the courts in our electoral process, our elections have been effectively and irrevocably staggered. That is why Edo State has its governorship elections differently. The same thing with Ondo, the same thing with Ekiti, the same thing with, I think, Bayelsa, and so on and so forth.
Osun.
So, for you to do all elections in a single day, you have to constitutionally abridge their 4-year tenure. So you have to go back and amend the constitution in order to abridge it. So there's a problem there. That is one. The second issue is that for me, there must always be democratic structures in place in Nigeria at all times to take care of emergencies and exigencies. Why do I say so? The only provision of the Constitution, I think it's section 135, subsection 3, allows the president to declare a state of emergency in Nigeria if the country is at war, in which the territory of Nigeria has been invaded by external forces. In that wise, the president can, in collaboration with the National Assembly, extend the tenure of all elected officers by a period of 6 months in the first instance. But consider a situation where there has not been external invasion and all elections are conducted in a single day and there's breakdown of law and order. And the 4-year period is about to elapse. And then the president uses section 305 to declare a state of emergency for 6 months. But before that 6 months, the 4-year tenure has elapsed. What you have is a constitutional aberration. So we cannot allow that to happen. That is at the level of the Constitution. From my own experience as a national commissioner, the conduct of elections in Nigeria is the biggest logistical challenge in peacetime. And for a place like Nigeria, for a country like Nigeria, conducting election is not an easy job. One, you have to keep on hiding election materials to prevent desperate politicians from cloning ballot papers. So sometimes some of these ballot papers are printed outside the country. And when they are brought in, they are hidden in the central bank.
Talking about the central bank.
Yes.
We had the bridge once when the central bank governor at some point in time, not the current one, central bank governor at some point in time, and there were talks about his affiliation to run, or he had political exposure. And I'm not referring to the current one.
Yes.
And I can imagine how INEC had to handle that. Hiding materials in supposedly the safest bank in Nigeria. And suddenly everybody said, it's not safe. Go and move your materials. And the chairman said, move these materials out of there to the nearest safest place outside of that. What was that experience like? Share. At least now in Insight, we can look at what really happened. What did happen in that occasion?
Well, when people started talking about the affiliation of the former governor of the central bank.
That's Godwin Emefiele.
Yes, we called the meeting of all the existing political parties in Nigeria to the commission. We said, look, people are saying, oh, this the governor of the central bank is politically affiliated. Move out the materials from the central bank. We called all the political parties to a meeting. They said no.
No.
They said no. No single political party said yes. They said we should leave the materials there. Now, the truth of the matter is that if you move the materials out, where are you going to keep them? We suggested we move them to police stations. The political party said no. We said let us move them to army formations. They said no, leave the materials in the central bank. And that is part of the challenge. So we have to keep on hiding these materials. Ordinarily, we ought to move all these materials to the local governments at least 7 days before elections. If you move the materials to the local government 7 days before elections, they will bomb the local governments. They will bomb the local governments. And I'm telling you. So, that is one. Two.
But just before you answer that, did the CBN governor at that time, did he ever get, because there were suggestions, and I remember quite a number of people in civil society were suggesting, call the CBN governor, let him explain his affiliation or lack of affiliation to any political party. Or did INEC by any chance say, Oga, please just reaffirm that you're not politically exposed? Because that was the basis of that was not even about the location, it was about the man who had the authority on the location.
No, we had no business with the governor of the central bank. We had a contract with the central bank. And our materials are with the central banks at the state level.
So it didn't matter that the CBN governor...
It had nothing to do with us. We had a contract. And for all the years we've been keeping our materials with the central bank, we had not had any challenge. And no political party has complained that there was any form of challenge. And the political parties were still happy with us leaving the materials at the central bank, because the way these materials come in pallets, and you can't tamper with any of them. You can't tamper with any of those pallets. And before we move the materials out of the central bank, all the representatives of the political parties come to the central bank, together with the police, together with all the security agencies, civil society groups and organizations. All the materials are brought out and checked one after the other. Thereafter, those materials are moved to the out of the central bank to the local governments under heavy security, accompanied by representatives of the political parties. So our materials are safe. What I'm saying is that if you do all elections in one day and something goes on in Nigeria and there's breakdown of law and order, how do you recover? And I'm talking of this country. I'm not talking of a country with a population of 10 million or 5 million. I'm talking of a place where we have to move materials to 8,809 locations, registration areas. I'm talking about a situation where we have to deploy materials to over 176,000 polling units. I'm talking of a situation where we have to move over 1.5 million ad hoc staff to various locations. I'm talking of a situation where you have some of the states that are in riverine areas, and the commission has to hire over 3,000 boats, and also commission the Navy to protect materials and personnel on the high seas. I'm talking of a situation where even in some places in Cross River, we have to hire human carriers to take people up the mountain. I'm talking of a situation where you have to hire sometimes over 88,000 motorbikes to move materials and personnel to locations that are not motorable. So conducting elections is not a child's play. It's not a child's play. So I think that constitutionally, the Constitution has given the Independent National Electoral Commission the authority and the power to organize, undertake, and supervise elections. You can't remove that authority from them. Constitutionally, the Constitution has said that in fixing dates of election, that it is the responsibility of the Commission to fix dates of election and sequence those elections. There's also a judicial pronouncement on that. So why are you trying to bungle it? When the Commission is ready, technologically, administratively, and mentally, and psychologically, to conduct all elections in a single day, it will do that. But for now, I think the Commission should be left alone to sequence elections in the best interest of the people of this country.
I just want to touch on something very quickly with regards to some of the commissioners when they travel from out of remote areas to come to Abuja to read out the results of their various states. Somebody was suggesting, and this he asked the question, and I brought on a lot of answers, but I would just like to hear your view on this, that if we can so much afford to fly those commissioners, maybe on a jet, maybe on anything at all, to come into Abuja, because every time we're watching election results on television and we are taking a recess, everybody says, hey, they have got to add +5, they have got to add +10. That's the feeling Nigerians get. And I've seen many elections in this country. It has never ceased to amaze me the number of times people say, see, he's pronouncing numbers wrongly. He's pronouncing this one wrongly. He have lose blue biro to correct black biro. I mean, what do you make of that process? Do you think it can be better so that the anxiety that we feel for 48 hours or thereabouts when election results are being read out is eased off?
No, I think that the Commission follows the law. If you look at the Electoral Act has listed the phases of elections and the phases of collation and where these collations will take place. Now, let me tell you this. The entire Independent National Electoral Commission, both at the national level, at the state level, and the local government level, has not up to 16,000 staff. 16,000. Our collation, the presiding officers are the polling units, and the assistant presiding officers are either core members or students of federal tertiary institutions. On election day, you will not see a staff of the Independent National Electoral Commission as a presiding officer. The supervisory presiding officers are drawn mostly from agencies and commissions of the government. There's a possibility that you will not even see a staff of the Independent National Electoral Commission as a supervisory presiding officer. The collation officers at the registration area level, at the local government level, and at the state level are mostly lecturers, academicians from federal tertiary institutions. The scope, that is the state collation officers, are mostly vice chancellors of federal tertiary institutions. You are not going to see any staff of the commission.
Is there any peculiar reason for picking lecturers and VCs? And this is me asking a Gen Z question. And I know it's a Gen Z question because I would say it's a Gen Z question because sometimes you meet traditions and people say this is how they do it. And everybody wonders, why do they do it like that? Why does it have to be a VC? Some VCs are sharper than the others. Some VCs are, you're just wondering, can he even read? Can he even write? Can he enunciate his points? How can you hand over an entire state election to somebody who can barely communicate what he's holding?
By the time you attain the position of a vice chancellor, either vice chancellor administration or vice chancellor academics or vice chancellor or deputy vice chancellor this, you have attained the zenith and you have something to lose.
True.
You have something to lose. There's an institution there are rules and regulations and laws guiding you. So you have something to lose if you misbehave. And you can see that one of the professors that conducted the election in Akwa Ibom is serving a prison sentence. So you have something to lose. And so I think that is a model that Nigerians have. And it's a model that has been copied by some other African countries. And then you talk about presiding officers. Somebody who is a core member, somebody who is in his or her final year in a federal tertiary institution, also has something to lose. And there's this enthusiasm, there's this desire to serve the country. But I want to tell you that some of them, the type of pressure that is brought to bear on them, especially in places that are not motorable, especially in rural areas, you see some of them return and they are crying. And because of the nature of our elections. So one of the things we must do as a people and as a nation, and a people as a country, is to make sure that the political elite in this country develop what I call the democratic spirit. That democratic spirit that allows the electoral process to run its course. That democratic spirit that says the votes of the people must be made to count. So all this talk about Nigerians are not patriotic, Nigerians don't love democracy, Nigerians don't want to vote, it's all lies. I practiced law in Kaduna for over 35 years. I was chairman of the transition monitoring group for 4 years. I participated in situation room meetings. I have seen in Kaduna women and men, old people, arrive polling units at 5 a.m. in the morning to take their positions on the queue. I have seen women bring their cooking utensils to the polling unit. I have been in Kaduna. A woman went and delivered and came back. That is not the trait of people who don't love democracy. The challenge in this country is that the political elite survive in a democratic setting. They rebrand themselves in a military regime. So whether democracy survives is immaterial. Whether military rule comes is immaterial. Because if military rule comes, they will rebrand themselves and become commissioners, become heads of parastatals, and so on and so forth. So they don't just care. But as far as I'm concerned, as somebody who was even in solitary confinement during military rule, as somebody who has fought for democracy in this country, as somebody who has had his passport seized severally, we will not allow people who have not fought for democracy and people who have no passion for democracy to bring democracy to ruin. We will not allow that.
That's deep. One of the biggest success around your time as commissioner was the number of people that turned out to register to vote. You were very keen on TV, radio, everywhere. You were pretty much encouraging people, do your registration, do all of that. There's an ongoing registration right now.
Yes.
It's interesting to know, but even before the ongoing registration, people started saying people are becoming dispassionate about, voter turnout. Last election was this, but I'm not sure we are showing up for the next one. I mean, there are all kinds of elements that people are throwing in now. Do you think the voter turnout decline as is being monitored, and some are saying even registration is getting slower and the likes of that? What do you make of the landscape? It's looking messy. It's not looking like the build-up you worked on.
One of the things we must avoid is what I call democratic regression. 2, we must find possible ways and means of re-engaging our people with the electoral process. If you look at countries that are in democratic regression, some of them slip into war. We don't want Nigeria to be like Sudan. We don't want Nigeria to be in like other countries where people see refugee camps as their permanent homes. So democracy offers the best possibility for us. And you don't make a change by disengaging. No. You make a change by engaging the process. You making a change by making suggestions on how the process can be improved. So my advice, especially to our younger generation, is that never give up. Keep on fighting. Go and register and vote, because whatever you say on social media may become useless, because on election day, INEC will not set up a polling unit on social media, and nobody will vote on social media. The voting will take place at the level of the polling units, and voting will only be done by those who registered and those who show up on election day. So I encourage you to register and also to show up. Secondly, this whole issue about voter turnout on election day, you must look at the issue of voter turnout from a broader perspective. If you look at the statistics, you will see that there was a period in this country where people registered and registered for others, and some individuals, some politicians, some merchants, some consultants had so many PVCs at their disposal. And on election day, they just hand it over to people to go and vote. The names of those people are still on the register. Secondly, we as a people, we do not report deaths. The National Population Commission is responsible for keeping of the data of births and deaths. But that data they will keep is based on what people give them. So we have very poor data of deaths. So what the commission does is that sometimes we take newspapers, look at obituary.
Really?
Yes, look at obituary of prominent people and then remove their names. Prominent people, you are sure that those people are no more. You remove their names. Because removing somebody's name from the voters register is not an easy job. When the commission is done with this continuous voters registration exercise, it will do what we call claims and objections. For people to report underage people registered, deaths, and so on and so on, very few people will do that. So the names of people who are deceased are still on the voters register. So my own suggestion, and my own honest view, is that after 3 or 4 electoral cycles, the commission should remove, there should be a constitutional or a legal provision allowing the commission to remove the names of people who did not show up for 4 electoral cycles.
I see.
Yes, that's my own suggestion. So that we can have an accurate voters register. And for this particular registration exercise, I want to appeal as a Nigerian and as a patriot that if you have just turned 18, please go and register. If you have not registered before, please go and register. But if you have registered before and you lost your voter's card, go and apply for a new PVC. Don't register again because your name is already there. If you register again, you create problem for yourself. If your voter's card is defaced, don't go and register again. If you register again, you will create problem for yourself because your name is already there. If you were living in Lagos and you have been transferred to Abuja, apply for transfer of your voter's card. Don't register again because your name is there. Don't think that because it's Lagos, if I come to Abuja, nobody will discover. You will create problem for yourself. During the 2022 CVR, I was supervising Anambra. I was also supervising Benue and Abia. I went to a registration center. I saw some women. Their voters' cards were defaced. I told them what to do. They said no. That I have been sent to come and disenfranchise them. So there's mistrust, lack of faith in public officers. I went to another registration center in another state. I saw a young boy. I suspected him, so I pulled him out. I saw him with 5 voters, 5 slips. He had registered 5 times in different places. I asked him why. He said that when he registers and goes back to his local government and shows the slip, that each slip is 5,000 naira.
Interesting.
So these are some of the challenges we have. So when you see a voters register containing 91 million Nigerians, and then at the end of the day, during voting, you see only 23 million Nigerians voted, and then you look at it, you say, it's 20%. People are no longer voting. It's not true. You must factor some of these challenges in. You must also factor the challenges of people who could not go out to vote because of a toxic environment. I had monitored the election in one particular state. As we were moving on the highway, overnight, some people had used red paint and written on the road, vote and die, vote and die, vote and die. So only the courageous will come out to vote. And then I went to one police unit. No, it's not a police, it's a school that has around 10 police units. By 12 noon, no single individual had voted. And there was nobody there. The electoral officers, the presiding officers were there. Until one old man and old woman came and voted. I saw people peeping through their windows. Now people started coming out because of fear. And I also went to another polling unit in another part of the country. Around 12 noon, nobody had voted. But all the voters were around. But all of them were facing one direction. I asked one boy, I said, why are you facing one direction? Why haven't you voted? They said he has not come. I said, who has not come? The guy looked at me and knew I was a stranger. They were waiting for somebody who had the money to come and settle them. So there are challenges in this country that we must confront. Both challenges with the political parties who sometimes believe that you can only win election through fraudulent means, through violence. And also challenges with some of our people who believe that for them to vote, you have to give them money. And also we have to they face challenges with also some staff of the commission who are also vulnerable to entreaties from political parties and from politicians. So I don't want to exonerate the electoral management body just because I was there. No, we are not all clean. There are also problems there to be confronted and also to be solved.
My final question. I was reading one of your interventions recently as regards campaign. I don't know, can I call it campaign or should I say sensitization about possible people who would run for 2027 election. And I was very confused. You can't call it campaign because it's not campaign period. I don't know, but it's being powered by organizations that are registered as CSOs, NGOs, and the billboards are there. And we are about 2 years to the election. And I was reading your intervention saying, thou shalt not do it, or don't go there. People should behave themselves and not start campaigning, or just, in quote, they said it's sensitization around it. Maybe you want to clearly explain that to me.
No, it's a very confusing situation. What they're engaging is what I call third-party campaigns. Third-party campaigns, that's exactly what they're doing. And the law, if you look at Section 84 of the Electoral Act, and also look at the pronouncements of the courts talk about those who are aspirants, who aspire, and candidates. And candidates are those who have contested party primaries and won, and their names have been submitted to the electoral management body as the candidates. But everybody is free to aspire. Now, party primaries have not been conducted. The electoral management body has not released the timetable for the conduct of elections. So what are people doing? They are exploiting the lacuna in the law and to engage in campaigns, and also using third parties to also do campaigns. So I think that electoral management body should approach the National Assembly and try to tighten the law so that third parties who are campaigning and also aspirants who are campaigning can be held accountable, because what that means is that what is going on now is that governance has taken the backstage and elections for 2027 is in full swing, and it is not good for the people of this country, it's not good for our democracy, and also it's not good for what we stand for.
Barrister Festus Okoye, a big thank you to you for coming on Volume with FemiDlive. I'm so grateful to you. Thank you so much for all your points. There are 1,001 questions still waiting in my head, but I don't want to go into it because of time. I really wanted to ask you about, political parties, the ones that exist, the ones that are changing officers, and the very transient period around it. But a big thanks to you for coming on Volume with FemiDlive.
Thank you for what you do for the people of this country.
Thank you, sir. All right, stay with us. We are expecting your comments, your clarifications, your views on quite a number of things. I love to read your debates and the points you debate on. You would also get the chance to read some of the things you're writing in various social media platforms when you do watch this. Thank you so much. And that's it. I'm Femi D. Amede.